Essentially, as Justin mentioned, my name is David. I'm currently a civil engineering and commerce student at UNSW. And I'm just going to give you a quick run through of sort of what civil engineering entails, whether it might be for you, it might not be for you. But sort of the end goal is just for you to sort of get a better understanding of what that field could involve. So, can you summarize your degree in a few sentences? So civil engineering is sort of like a degree, sort of similar to all the other engineering degrees, but we sort of focus on things like structures. So things like buildings, roads, highways, transport, just anything that's sort of in your environment, like your house, like skyscrapers, city planning. There's a lot of different things that are involved in engineering. I myself, I'm sort of growing into like a structural engineer, so looking at buildings, different loading conditions, like wind, people in buildings as well. And essentially, what your degree could look like on a day-to-day basis is something like this. So typically, as a structural engineer, you analyze the loads within the building. So how many people are on this floor, how many tables, chairs, what are the loading conditions? And then you sort of design like the slab. So underneath what you're standing on, there's probably a really dense, thick, I guess like slab of concrete. And you have reinforcement in there that's actually keeping us all standing up because there's forces pushing down and the reinforcement's providing a force back up. How does this work compared to high school? So I think at university, it's definitely a lot more like an open ocean. There's a lot of different things you can do. You can be involved in societies. The work is definitely a lot faster. Things that you typically learn over like a term at high school, you probably cover in about 2 weeks in your first like 4 hours of lectures. It's pretty fast. And I guess like the work is always changing. There's different assignments. You'll be expected to work in teams a lot more often. As well as writing reports, and you've got final exams, which usually weigh pretty heavily as well. So why did you choose your degree and what factors influence you the most? Curiosity, I think, is the first and foremost thing. If you're curious about any particular discipline, I highly encourage you to sort of pursue that first. I think Justin mentioned it before, if you do enjoy something, you're genuinely curious, you do exceptionally better. Second thing is, I'll be honest, I think friends influence you a lot as well. Sometimes you sort of have the idea that, hey, like my friends doing this, I'll give it a shot as well. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. For me, like I think 4 of my closest friends are probably civil engineers as well. And so just like take into that consideration, like sometimes it is easier when you're starting university to be with friends because there's someone you can sort of relate to. They do the same coursework, you can help each other out. But there's also that downside that possibly it might not be the right career path for you as well. What type of person would you recommend your degree to? So I guess I'll speak in engineering in general. If you're someone that's quite systematic, so you like to follow certain procedures or you like to think in a particular way, engineering is a pretty good place to go. Everything is quite structured. You follow certain steps. You possibly use standards, which are like sort of like Australian regulations for like how tall this room should be or how wide a certain room should be. If you're someone that likes problem solving, engineers are pretty good for that. On the maths and physics side, it's not too heavy as a civil engineer, depending on what sort of streams you go into, like whether that's water, transport, or buildings. For structural engineering, in my case, you sort of deal with maths, but it's not at a really significantly difficult level. What career paths lead out of your degree? So I guess, as I just mentioned before, civil engineering is quite broad. You sort of start to specialize a couple years in. So you have things like water, which is like sort of design of like dams. You're looking at like pipelines and how the water sort of flows, how like wastewater systems. So where does the water go from the toilets? Does it get treated in a facility, like Sydney Water kind of thing? You've also got the transport side of things. So that's sort of looking at about like town planning, how are the vehicles behaving in a certain area, whether you need a design for certain places to be more, to have like a rail line or maybe more frequent buses, just the general behavior of the consumers. And then you've got like the construction side, which is sort of more practical. You're on site, you're overlooking quality. You're also just doing a lot of like process control, so just planning like scheduling out the tasks and activities. And I guess like the fourth big one is probably buildings. So looking at building skyscrapers, facades, so just the outside of a building, as well as internally in the walls, the slabs, the roof, the ceilings, everything like that. What are some of the most misconceptions about your degree? I guess the first misconception with civil engineering is probably the first thing you think of is just buildings. I think civil engineering is a lot more than that. Although I am the typical engineer who is doing with buildings, And I guess like you sort of imagine that the math side is really difficult, but honestly, it's actually pretty straightforward. Like you sort of have a little bit of physics, a little bit of maths, and you sort of tie that in with just the problem solving skills that you just develop as you grow. What is one piece of advice you'd give to HSC student looking to enter university? I guess first and foremost, just be curious. Be open to new experiences. University is quite different from high school, as probably all the speakers will speak about today. And I think something that Justin touched upon earlier was that networking. So I guess like networking, although that's sort of like a formal term, I think at university, it's sort of like a group effort. You sort of start to know people in your cohort, meet a lot of new people, you work together in groups. And it's really important for you to just have like a support network. If someone has resources for your subjects, whether that's past papers or like you're working on an assignment and you have questions, generally like there'll be a forum on Moodle or something like that, some sort of learning thing. But it's much more efficient just to message a friend on Messenger or just reach out to someone, right? Like I think it's like at high school you sort of had the mentality that, hey, I'm here to beat you because the ranks matter. But in I guess at university, everyone sort of is just working together to get the best results they can. And whether that's like you leveraging a certain strength of yours and your friend is a bit weak in a certain area, you can sort of work together to play around that. And I think the value of networks is particularly important as you're sort of about to graduate. You realize as you sort of work into your field that you will meet a lot of different people, and you never know if someone could refer you for a job, someone could be a referee for your resume, and just generally just help you with anything that you have questions about. Yeah, that's it from me.